In the crisp autumn air of October 2023, a small courtroom in Flint, Michigan, buzzes with an electric tension. The town, once known for its resilience through economic hardship, now finds itself at the center of a chilling revelation. As the gavel strikes, the courtroom holds its breath. An arrest has been made, sending shockwaves through this close-knit community. But to truly understand the weight of this moment, we must journey back to where it all began, nearly 2 decades ago. In the spring of 2004, Flint was a town struggling to find its footing. Among its residents was Amy Mitchell, a vibrant 24-year-old with an infectious laugh and a heart full of dreams. She was the kind of person who lit up any room she entered, always ready with a kind word or a helping hand. Amy had deep roots in Flint. Her family had lived there for generations, and she was determined to make a difference in her community. Amy worked as a nurse at the local hospital, where she was beloved by colleagues and patients alike. She had an unyielding passion for caring for others, a passion that drove her every day. Outside of work, Amy was deeply involved in community service, organizing food drives and volunteering at shelters. Her life was a testament to selflessness and compassion. But on the night of May 15, 2004, everything changed. Amy attended a charity event at the Flint Community Center, a place she often frequented for such causes. Friends remember her wearing a bright yellow dress that night, her laughter echoing through the halls. As the event wound down, Amy said her goodbyes, promising to see everyone soon. Yet in a town where everyone knew everyone, Amy vanished without a trace. Her disappearance left the community reeling. The initial investigation was swift but flawed, full of false leads and dead ends. Despite the efforts of the local police, no solid evidence emerged. Amy's family, heartbroken and desperate, took matters into their own hands, canvassing neighborhoods, posting flyers, and pleading for information. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The bustling energy of Flint seemed to dull, shadowed by Amy's absence. Her family refused to give up hope, but the years of silence were deafening. Then, on a quiet autumn evening, a chilling 911 call shattered the stillness. A voice trembling with fear reported a discovery near the outskirts of town. It was the kind of call that would change everything, reigniting a case that had long gone cold and setting off a chain of events that would lead to the most unexpected of revelations. What was found that night? Who could have been responsible for Amy's disappearance? As the past collides with the present, Flint is left to grapple with the question, how well do we really know the people around us? The quiet hum of the night was pierced by the urgency of the dispatcher's voice over the radio. Within minutes, flashing lights painted the autumn leaves in hues of red and blue. The police arrived at the scene near the forgotten outskirts of Flint, a place where the town's whispers faded into the rustling woods. Officers moved with purpose, their breath visible in the crisp air as they approached the source of the 911 call. Amidst the brush and tangled undergrowth lay a discovery that would soon unravel the very fabric of the community. The officers' torches flickered over a shallow grave, revealing a sight that would haunt them. A piece of bright yellow fabric, unmistakably similar to the dress Amy wore that fateful night. The scene became a flurry of activity, with the forensic team meticulously collecting every piece of evidence. As the dawn broke, Flint's streets buzzed with the news. Amy's name was once again on everyone's lips, but this time it wasn't hope that fueled the conversation. It was fear. The first 48 hours after Amy's disappearance had been crucial, a fact not lost on Detective Marcus Elwood, the lead investigator back in 2004. He recalls the initial chaos, the barrage of calls from concerned citizens, each one claiming to have seen Amy, none leading anywhere concrete. In those early hours, the police scrambled to piece together her last known movements. The charity event was their starting point. Eyewitnesses remembered her vivacious presence, but as the night wore on, their memories blurred. Some thought they saw her leave alone. Others swore they caught a glimpse of her with a shadowy figure. The investigation's early missteps were manifold. Critical hours were lost pursuing red herrings, like the sighting of Amy's car miles away. An oversight in securing the event's CCTV footage meant vital evidence was lost forever. Amy's family, reeling from the shock, had tried to be patient with law enforcement, but frustration soon turned to action. Her brother, David, became a familiar face on the local news, his pleas for information cutting through the community's apathy. He organized search parties determined to leave no stone unturned. Their efforts, though tireless, were in vain, as Amy seemed to have vanished into thin air. Yet in those first 2 days, there was one voice that stood out among the witnesses, a young woman who worked at the community center. She mentioned a man who had been lingering at the event, someone she hadn't recognized. Her description was vague, but her conviction was clear. Unfortunately, her account was overshadowed by the chaos, her words lost in the shuffle of the initial investigation. Now, with the discovery of the grave, the weight of those first 48 hours bore down on Detective Elwood. Regrets haunted him, but with this new evidence, there was also a glimmer of redemption. The team was determined to follow through on every lead with renewed vigor. As the police dug deeper into the past, Amy's family gathered at their home, the discovery reopening wounds that had never truly healed. Her mother clutched a faded photograph, tears glistening in her eyes, as she whispered a promise to her daughter, a vow that justice would be served. But who was it that had watched Amy so intently that night? What secrets had the community kept hidden all these years? As the investigation reignited, the answers seemed tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly elusive. The clock was ticking, and the town of Flint braced itself for revelations that would forever change the way they saw those they thought they knew. The day after Amy's disappearance, the Flint Police Department was a hive of activity, the air thick with urgency and a hint of desperation. Detective Elwood paced the cluttered precinct, his mind racing with questions. The first 48 hours were critical, and he knew every second counted. Yet, the initial response had been far from perfect. Officers had been dispatched quickly, canvassing the area around the community center. They questioned attendees, but the sheer number of people and the chaotic atmosphere made it nearly impossible to gather coherent accounts. Witness statements were hurriedly scribbled, details muddled, and crucial observations overlooked. Amy's parents sat in a dimly lit interview room, their eyes red-rimmed and weary. Her father spoke in halting tones, describing his daughter's warm smile, her love for community service and her plans for college. Her mother, clutching the photograph tighter, could only nod, her voice lost to grief. Meanwhile, the young woman from the community center, Sarah, repeated her account to a skeptical officer. She described the man's piercing gaze, the way he seemed to hover on the periphery, his presence almost predatory. But with no concrete details to offer, her story was filed away, a footnote in a growing pile of reports. In the family's living room, David gathered with friends and volunteers. Maps were spread across the coffee table, marking areas they had searched and those yet to be covered. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of his fears. He urged the group to stay vigilant, to keep Amy in the public eye, to not let her become another forgotten statistic. Back at the precinct, Detective Elwood reviewed the scant evidence. A missing handbag, a lone earring found near the community center's entrance. He knew the team had made mistakes, failing to lock down the scene, not prioritizing the CCTV footage that was now irretrievably lost. But he also understood that dwelling on past errors wouldn't bring Amy home. His phone buzzed, an alert from a patrol officer. A man had come forward, claiming to have seen someone matching Amy's description entering a dark sedan the night she disappeared. Elwood's pulse quickened. A potential lead, though vague, was better than none. The officer on the call sounded hesitant, his voice laced with doubt. Witnesses often remembered things differently in the chaos of a crisis, but Elwood knew he couldn't afford to dismiss anything. He instructed the officer to get a detailed statement, emphasizing the importance of every detail, no matter how small. As the sun set on the second day, the weight of time pressed heavily on Elwood and his team. The community center worker's description of the mysterious man lingered in his mind, a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit, yet couldn't be ignored. David stood by the window at home, staring at the growing darkness outside. He whispered a silent promise to his sister, vowing that he would never stop searching until she was found. The town of Flint, once a backdrop of mundane routines, had transformed into a landscape of whispered fears and mounting suspicion. Neighbors who once exchanged pleasantries now eyed each other with distrust. The question hung in the air. Who among them could betray a sense of safety so profoundly? Detective Elwood knew the clock was ticking. The first 48 hours had slipped away, but hope and determination fueled his resolve. Little did he know the answers lay closer than anyone could imagine, buried beneath layers of everyday normalcy. The morning of the third day dawned with an air of uncertainty hanging over Flint, Michigan. Detective Elwood arrived at the precinct, his mind replaying the details of the previous days. The community's anxiety was palpable, and he felt its weight in every step he took. Inside the precinct, the atmosphere was tense. Officers shuffled through stacks of papers, their eyes scanning for any overlooked piece of evidence that could provide a breakthrough. Elwood gathered his team for a debrief, determined to sift through the chaos of the initial response with a fine-tooth comb. The witness, a young man named Jake, sat nervously in the interview room. He recounted his story with a halting voice, describing how he'd seen a woman who he believed was Amy, talking to a man by a dark sedan. The details were scarce, but he remembered the man wearing a distinctive leather jacket. Elwood pressed for more. Any unique identifiers? Any unusual behavior? Jake hesitated, then mentioned a peculiar tattoo he glimpsed on the man's wrist as he reached for the car door. The first misstep became evident. Officers had brushed off this detail in the initial chaos, not realizing its potential significance. Elwood instructed his team to circulate a description of the tattoo to local tattoo parlors, hoping it might lead them to the mysterious man. Meanwhile, Amy's family was caught in a whirlwind of their own. Her mother, Martha, sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by friends and family offering support. The house was filled with a constant hum of phone calls and whispered conversations. David, Amy's brother, took on the role of communicator, relaying updates from the police to his parents, trying to maintain a semblance of hope amidst the mounting fear. The early hours of Amy's disappearance had been marred by another critical error, an oversight in securing the crime scene. The community center had remained open, with people traipsing through, potentially destroying crucial evidence. Elwood cursed under his breath, knowing this lapse could cost them dearly. As the minutes ticked by, Elwood's team began to piece together a timeline. They identified other potential witnesses who had been at the community center that night. One, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, recalled seeing a similar sedan parked oddly close to the entrance. Her description matched Jake's, reinforcing the lead. Back at the precinct, tensions ran high. The pressure to find Amy was mounting with each passing hour. A sense of urgency infused their work, pushing them to double their efforts. Elwood knew that every decision, every action taken or neglected in these first days could mean the difference between finding Amy and losing her forever. As the day drew to a close, Elwood gathered his team once more. The mistakes of the initial hours loomed large, but they couldn't afford to look back. Determined to move forward, they clung to the slim threads of leads they had, knowing they had to unravel this tangled web before it was too late. In the darkness of his office, Elwood stared at the board filled with pictures and notes. Amy's face looked back at him, a reminder of the urgency of their mission. Somewhere in the shadows of Flint, the truth awaited. It was up to them to bring it to light. The night descended over Flint with a heavy silence, save for the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant hum of traffic. Elwood's office, dimly lit by the glow of a single lamp, felt like a cocoon amidst the uncertainty. His eyes lingered on Amy's photograph, the innocence in her smile contrasting sharply with the grim reality they faced. He could almost feel the weight of her family's anguish, pushing him to find answers. The following morning, the precinct buzzed with activity. Officers shuffled through paperwork, phones rang incessantly, and conversations overlapped in a chaotic symphony. Elwood called for a briefing, his voice firm but tinged with exhaustion. They needed to regroup, refocus. "We have a few leads," he began, gesturing to the board, "but we need to dig deeper. Mrs. Henderson's account gives us a possible vehicle. Let's track down any similar sedans in the area that night." Just as the team began to disperse, a young officer approached Elwood with new information. "Sir, we've got a couple of names from the community center's log. 2 men came forward, claiming they saw Amy leave with someone." Elwood's heart quickened. "Who are they?" "Tommy and Ray, local kids. They've had a few run-ins with the law, but nothing serious." Elwood nodded, motioning for the officer to bring them in for questioning. As he waited, he couldn't ignore the stir of unease. First witnesses often held the key, but they could just as easily derail an investigation. When Tommy and Ray arrived, their demeanor was a mix of bravado and nervous energy. Over the course of the interview, they painted a picture of the night, music blaring, laughter echoing in the halls, and then a shadowy figure leaving with Amy. "Could you see who it was?" Elwood pressed, trying to extract any shred of detail. Tommy shrugged, exchanging a glance with Ray. "It was dark, but we saw a guy tall wearing a hoodie. They seemed to be talking, maybe arguing." Elwood's brow furrowed. "Arguing? Did you recognize the man?" Ray shook his head. "Not really. A lot of folks wear hoodies like that." The description was vague, frustratingly so, but in the absence of solid evidence, even the faintest outline could become a focal point. Elwood released the boys, knowing that their testimony, while inconclusive, might help piece together the puzzle. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers in Flint grew louder. The community buzzed with speculation, theories multiplying like weeds. The town's collective anxiety found targets in innocent faces. Fingers were pointed, friendships tested. Every man who matched the vague description was scrutinized, their lives upended by suspicion. Elwood found himself drowning in reports, each one a dead end. The sedan, the hoodie-clad figure, each lead evaporated under scrutiny. The investigation, once a fervent race against time, now limped along, weighed down by the absence of new evidence. In the quiet moments, when the precinct's din faded, Elwood grappled with the chilling prospect of failure. Amy's case teetered on the edge of going cold, a fate he refused to accept. Yet without fresh leads, the trail grew fainter by the day. And as Elwood looked out over the town, shrouded in uncertainty and fear, he knew they stood on a precipice. The next step could either bring them closer to the truth or push them further into the shadows. The tension in Flint was palpable, the air thick with unease. Elwood, ever the diligent investigator, felt the weight of the community's expectations pressing down on his shoulders. Each morning, he would shuffle through the growing stack of reports on his desk, hoping for a breakthrough, but finding only more silence. The town, once vibrant, now seemed cloaked in suspicion. The vague details of a tall man in a hoodie had cast a wide net of paranoia. Friends avoided eye contact, neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and the once tight-knit community began to fracture under the strain of uncertainty. Amidst the growing tension, a new name surfaced: Marcus Hill, a local mechanic known for his reclusive nature and occasional bouts of temper. Rumors swirled that he had been seen near the party that night, his shadowy presence feeding the town's restless imagination. Elwood knew he had to tread carefully. Marcus, while not a stranger to the police due to minor infractions, had never been violent. Yet, the mounting pressure to act pushed Elwood to bring Marcus in for questioning. The townsfolk watched with bated breath as Marcus was escorted into the station, whispers of guilt already labeling him a suspect. In the interrogation room, Elwood faced Marcus, a man seemingly indifferent to the chaos swirling around him. Marcus sat, arms crossed, gaze steady. "How you know why you're here, Marcus?" Elwood began, his voice calm but firm. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. "I heard the rumors. People say you were near the party the night Amy went missing." Marcus shrugged. "I was. My shop's not far. I heard the music, thought I'd see what was going on." Elwood leaned forward, scrutinizing Marcus's every word. "Did you see Amy?" Marcus shook his head. "Too many people. I kept to myself. Didn't talk to nobody." Despite Marcus's calm demeanor, his presence was enough to ignite the town's fears. As the days dragged on without confession or evidence linking him to the crime, the whispers of his guilt began to wane, replaced by frustration and a sense of helplessness. Elwood released Marcus, knowing that without solid evidence he was only another piece in a puzzle that refused to come together. The investigation, once a beacon of hope, now seemed a labyrinth with no exit. The town's patience thinned. The community meetings devolved into shouting matches, accusations flying with reckless abandon. Elwood attended each one, absorbing the anger and fear, his resolve hardening with every encounter. The case was slipping from his grasp, the specter of it going cold, looming ever larger. Yet in the darkest hours, when hope seemed a distant memory, a single relentless thought fueled him. Amy deserved justice. And so, with determination burning in his chest, Elwood vowed to continue the search, to sift through the ashes of dead leads and false hope, in pursuit of the truth that had eluded them all. As the first signs of winter settled over Flint, the chill in the air mirrored the growing coldness of the case, but Elwood refused to let it freeze his resolve. In the coming days, he would need every ounce of that resolve, for the truth, buried deep beneath layers of silence and fear, waited patiently to be unearthed. As the frost crept over Flint, Elwood found himself standing at the crossroads of frustration and determination. The community, once united in grief and hope, began to fracture under the weight of suspicion and unanswered questions. Rumors spread like wildfire, each whisper more outlandish than the last, but all carrying the same desperate plea for resolution. In the dim light of the station, Elwood sat surrounded by files, each one a reminder of leads that had turned to dust. He replayed every interview, every fragment of evidence, searching for something, anything, that could reignite the investigation. Yet the path seemed to loop endlessly back to Marcus. His presence at the party was the only tangible thread they had, but it was a thread that unraveled before it could be woven into the fabric of truth. The town, meanwhile, had turned its gaze inward, suspicion and fear twisting neighbor against neighbor. Names circulated in hushed tones, local misfits, troubled youths, and anyone who dared to stand out. The Davis twins, known for their rowdy behavior and frequent run-ins with the law, became the latest focus of the town's ire. They were seen as troublemakers, boys who had never grown out of their rebellious phase, and although their alibi for the night of Amy's disappearance was shaky at best, it was the lack of solid evidence that stalled any further action. Elwood knew better than to chase shadows, but the pressure mounted with each passing day. He visited the twins, his approach cautious but probing. Their denials were vehement, but there was an edge of defensiveness that Elwood couldn't quite shake. Still, without more, he was left with nothing but conjecture. The community meetings grew more contentious. Parents demanded answers, their eyes dark with sleepless nights and unending worry. Amy's family sat silent in the front row, their faces etched with the kind of pain that time does not ease. Elwood listened to their pleas, each one a dagger to his resolve. He promised to continue, to leave no stone unturned, but the words felt hollow, even to him. As the days turned into weeks, the case began to cool, the fervor of the initial investigation fading like fog in the morning sun. The once vibrant posters of Amy, now weathered and torn, fluttered despondently on telephone poles and shop windows. Her disappearance, once the heart of every conversation, became a spectre lingering at the edges of the town's consciousness. And yet, in the quiet moments, when the world slowed and the noise of doubt faded, Elwood felt the faintest pulse of hope. There was something there, buried deep, waiting to be discovered. The truth was out there, shrouded in silence and fear, and it was his duty to bring it to light. But for now, as the first snowflakes began to fall, the investigation lay dormant, the promise of justice a flicker in the winter night. And as Elwood braced himself against the chill, he knew that the hardest part had only just begun. The years crept by like a slow-moving river, eroding the edges of memory but never quite washing away the pain. Amy's family remained anchored in their sorrow, each anniversary of her disappearance a fresh wound, a reminder of what once was and what could never be again. Her mother, once vibrant and full of life, became a ghost of herself, her eyes perpetually fixed on the horizon, as if expecting Amy to walk back into their lives at any moment. Her father, stoic and steadfast, channeled his grief into quiet determination, poring over every scrap of evidence, every note, every police report, searching for the thread that would unravel the truth. In the small town of Flint, life moved on, as life often does. New families moved into the neighborhood, unaware of the shadow that loomed just beneath the surface. Children grew up, left for college, returned with families of their own. The town's landscape shifted subtly. New businesses opened, others closed, but the undercurrent of Amy's absence remained, a whisper in the wind that never truly faded. Elwood, though retired, never let the case drift far from his thoughts. He'd return to the file every now and then, thumbing through the pages as if they might reveal something new. He'd grown older, his hair now a shock of white, but his resolve remained unbroken. He attended Amy's memorial every year, standing quietly at the back, his presence a silent testament to his promise. The family, fueled by a relentless love, embarked on their own investigations. They hired private detectives, scoured online forums, and connected with families of other missing children, hoping to find solace or, at the very least, solidarity. But the silence was deafening, the trail cold, each lead a dead end that led only to further heartache. And yet the town of Flint bore witness to small miracles: births, weddings, the first snowfall of the year, events that punctuated the passage of time. The community, though scarred, was resilient, and while the immediate fervor of Amy's disappearance had dimmed, the memory of her bright smile lingered in the collective consciousness, a beacon of innocence lost too soon. As the years wore on, whispers of new developments occasionally rippled through the town like the wind before a storm. Rumors of fresh evidence, of theories disproved and revisited, kept the embers of hope alive, however faint they might have been. And then, as if from nowhere, came a letter, a single page that would reignite the investigation and shake the town to its core. It arrived on a clear autumn morning, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves. Handwritten, unsigned, and postmarked from a neighboring town, it bore a chilling message. "I know who took Amy." The words were like a lightning bolt, charging through the silence, turning the community's quiet acceptance into a roar of renewed anguish and anticipation. Elwood, now more mentor than investigator, found himself drawn back into the fold, his instincts sharpened by the years of waiting. Within hours, the town was abuzz, speculation and suspicion weaving through the streets like a tapestry of unfinished stories. The letter was a lifeline, fragile yet potent, hinting at secrets long buried. As night fell over Flint, the sense of anticipation was palpable, the air thick with questions waiting to be answered. Who had sent the letter, and why now? What truths lay hidden beneath its cryptic words? And most importantly, would this be the key to finally unearthing the truth of what happened to Amy all those years ago? The silence had been broken, but the echoes of its long reign still lingered, casting shadows over the path to justice. As the town braced for the uncovering of long-buried truths, the promise of resolution loomed, a light flickering on the horizon. The letter, though unsigned, held a weight that could not be ignored. It brought Amy's family, who had spent years teetering on the edge of hope and despair, back into the spotlight. For them, the silence had been both a curse and a comfort. It allowed them to grieve privately, away from prying eyes, yet each passing year without answers was a reminder of the justice denied. Amy's mother, Linda, had become a fixture at the local library, combing through books and online forums about cold cases, desperate for any piece of information that could be applied to her daughter's disappearance. She had become a self-taught investigator, driven by a relentless need to find closure. Each day she would pin new theories and newspaper clippings to the wall in her study, a mosaic of unanswered questions and dead-end leads. The community, in the wake of the initial investigation's failures, had slowly moved on. New families came and went, businesses opened and closed, and the streets of Flint bustled with the rhythm of everyday life. Yet there remained an unspoken understanding among the long-time residents, a shared sorrow for Amy, and a quiet respect for her family's enduring pain. But the letter changed the landscape. It was as if the town awoke from a long slumber, forced once again to confront the uncomfortable truths buried beneath its surface. Elwood, with his years of experience and a heart still tethered to the case, felt the old fire rekindle within him. He had never stopped thinking about Amy, about the promise he made to her parents that he would never give up. The letter's arrival brought with it a renewed sense of urgency. Elwood, alongside a new generation of investigators, began revisiting old evidence, scrutinizing every piece of information with fresh eyes. Theories that had been dismissed were re-examined, witness statements were reviewed, and new technologies offered possibilities once thought impossible. Meanwhile, the letter itself became a puzzle, its origins a mystery that demanded unraveling. Who had written it? Was it a cruel prank or a genuine breakthrough? The postmark from the neighboring town suggested proximity, perhaps even familiarity with the case. Elwood and his team began tracing the letter's path, hoping to uncover the identity of the author. For Linda and her family, the renewed attention was both a blessing and a burden. Memories they had tucked away were brought back to the surface, raw and painful. Yet there was also a flicker of hope, a chance that this time, finally, they might learn the truth. The town watched with bated breath, caught between skepticism and optimism. The letter had broken the silence, but the road to resolution was fraught with uncertainty. As the investigation picked up pace, one question loomed larger than any other. Would this be the breakthrough they had been waiting for, or just another cruel twist in a story that had already seen too many? In Flint, where the weight of the past lingered heavily, the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: the silence had been shattered, and in its place, a new chapter was beginning to unfold. The years had not been kind to the Johnson family. Linda, Amy's mother, often wondered if the ache of not knowing would ever dull. Each day was a reminder of the life that could have been, a life stolen away without closure or justice. And yet, life in Flint moved forward, as life so cruelly does. The case had slipped into the background, a whisper of the past that haunted only a few. The town, wearing the veneer of normalcy, seemed to forget. New developments, new scandals, and the relentless march of time buried Amy's story under layers of newer memories. Yet for Linda, each day without answers felt like an eternity. Determined not to let Amy be forgotten, the Johnson family took matters into their own hands. Linda became the reluctant face of a private crusade, fueled by grief but driven by a mother's love. She and her husband, Tom, spent countless hours poring over every article, every report, pulling at threads that seemed to lead nowhere. They hired private investigators, each one promising more than the last and delivering little. The years ticked by, and hope dimmed to a frail flicker. The townspeople, while sympathetic, had their lives to lead. Some whispered their pity to each other in hushed tones. Others offered words of comfort that rang hollow in their familiarity. "Such a tragedy," they'd say, shaking their heads, before turning back to their own troubles. The Johnsons were left to navigate their grief largely alone, their lives a testament to unresolved sorrow. But then, the letter. It was a small thing, a piece of paper that for a moment seemed to breathe life back into a case that had long since gone cold. Elwood's team, invigorated by the prospect of a new lead, left no stone unturned. And yet the silence of the intervening years loomed over them, a reminder of how elusive the truth could be. As the investigators delved deeper, Linda found herself caught in a tumult of emotions. The pain of reopening old wounds clashed with the desperate hope that this time things might be different. Memories of Amy as a child, full of life and laughter, mingled with the harsh reality of her absence. In the town, conversations began to shift. The letter was the talk of the community, a curious development in a story thought long finished. Speculation ran rampant, theories spun anew in the coffee shops and living rooms. Suspicion and curiosity mingled in a potent brew, and those who lived through the original investigation found themselves drawn back into its orbit. Yet for the Johnsons, this renewed interest was a double-edged sword. The attention brought with it a painful reminder of past promises unkept, of a justice system that had failed them. But this time, there was a glimmer of hope, an indication that someone, somewhere, knew something they did not. The community, once silent, now watched intently. Would the letter prove to be the key that unlocked the mystery, or just another dead end in a labyrinth of despair? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the investigation pressed forward, each day bringing them closer to the truth, or so they hoped. And so, with hearts heavy but spirits unyielding, the Johnsons braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. The silence had been broken, but the echoes of the past were far from quieted. As Flint held its breath, the story of Amy Johnson teetered on the brink of revelation, with the promise of answers and justice just out of reach. The morning sun cast a pale light over the Flint Police Department as Detective Sarah Mills arrived for her first day on the reopened case. With a reputation for her tenacity and innovative approach, she was the department's new hope in solving Amy Johnson's disappearance. Her arrival coincided with whispers of a breakthrough technology that had recently come to light: genetic genealogy. Sarah wasted no time. She immediately began reviewing the cold, dusty files, poring over every detail with fresh eyes. Her attention was drawn to the evidence box, long sealed and forgotten, containing items from the original investigation. Among them, a small plastic bag with a single hair found on Amy's sweater. Back in 2004, it had yielded nothing conclusive, but now it was a potential gold mine. In the dimly lit evidence room, Sarah met with Dr. Rebecca Chen, a forensic scientist who had pioneered the use of genetic genealogy in criminal investigations. Rebecca explained how they could extract DNA from the hair, build a profile, and potentially link it to relatives through public genealogy databases. As they spoke, Linda Johnson, Amy's mother, sat quietly in the waiting area. The weight of the years without answers bore heavily on her shoulders. Yet the sight of new faces and renewed energy brought a flicker of hope to her weary heart. Linda clung to the possibility that this time they might finally uncover the truth about her daughter's fate. Meanwhile, in the community, the intrigue only grew. The local news had caught wind of the reopened case, and speculation about the new forensic technique spread like wildfire. Rumors floated around, suggesting that the killer might be someone they'd never expect, perhaps even someone still living among them. The days that followed saw Sarah and Rebecca working tirelessly. The DNA extraction process was delicate, requiring precision and patience. Each step was meticulously documented, each moment charged with the anticipation of a breakthrough. And then, it happened. One afternoon, Rebecca's voice broke the silence in the lab, filled with excitement and disbelief. The analysis had returned a match to a distant relative of someone in Flint, a name that hadn't surfaced in the investigation before. Sarah immediately delved into the genealogical records, tracing the family tree until she arrived at a name that sent a chill down her spine. It was someone known to the community, someone who had been present during the early searches for Amy, someone who had been quietly living their life amidst the whispers of a town haunted by its past. As the pieces began to fall into place, Sarah knew they were on the verge of something monumental. The revelation was both shocking and unsettling, a testament to how the truth can hide in plain sight. But before she could act, she needed more evidence, more confirmation to ensure their case was airtight. The stakes were higher than ever, and the clock was ticking. In the quiet backdrop of Flint, a new chapter was unfolding. The town, still holding its collective breath, awaited the next move in this decades-old mystery. The question now was not just who had taken Amy, but how long they could evade justice in a world where the past was catching up with the present. The revelation had opened a Pandora's box. What would they find next? In the days that followed Rebecca's discovery, the tension in Flint was palpable, an electric charge that seemed to hang in the air, invisible yet undeniable. Sarah knew they were on the cusp of something big, but with the community still reeling from the initial shock, the path forward had to be navigated with care and precision. The new detective assigned to the case, Detective Marcus Hale, had arrived with a fresh perspective and a determination that rekindled hope among the townspeople. Having heard of his success in solving similarly complex cases in neighboring counties, he was seen as a beacon of hope in this long-standing shadow. Marcus approached Sarah and Rebecca with a plan, a methodical strategy to ensure their findings were irrefutable. They needed to cross-reference the genetic match with more concrete evidence, anything that could tie their suspect to Amy's disappearance definitively. Meanwhile, whispers and speculation continued to ripple through Flint like an undercurrent, fueling both fear and curiosity. Who among them had lived these years in quiet concealment, their true nature masked by a facade of normalcy? Marcus decided to re-interview those who had been involved in the initial search efforts, a task that seemed both daunting and necessary. Among them was Henry Larson, a well-respected member of the community who had always been at the forefront of local charity work and had organized several of the early search parties when Amy had first disappeared. Henry's demeanor was as affable as ever, yet Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that there was something beneath the surface, a layer yet to be peeled back. As they spoke, Marcus noted the subtle tension in Henry's hands, the way his eyes flickered ever so slightly at the mention of Amy's name. Back at the lab, Sarah and Rebecca worked alongside Marcus to secure a warrant for a crucial piece of evidence, a personal item from Henry that could provide the definitive DNA comparison they needed. The waiting game was excruciating, each day stretching longer in the minds of those yearning for closure. Then, out of the blue, came an unexpected development. A local nurse named Linda came forward with a story that sent shivers down the spine of everyone involved. She spoke of a patient, an elderly man who had recently passed away, who in his final days had muttered words that had haunted her since. "He said he knew something about Amy," Linda recounted, her voice a mix of fear and urgency. He mentioned a name, Henry. This deathbed confession, though cryptic, added a new layer to their investigation. It was a puzzle piece that Marcus, Sarah, and Rebecca couldn't ignore. The race was now against time, and the fragility of memories long buried. As the pieces of the past began to align with the present, the team was faced with a daunting question. Could Henry be the key to unraveling this mystery, or was he another victim of misdirection in a case filled with twists and turns? The stage was set for a confrontation that could finally bring justice to Amy and peace to Flint. But with each new revelation came the risk of uncovering even darker secrets. The truth was within reach, but it was a truth that could change everything. The clock ticked loudly in the small, dimly lit office where Marcus, Sarah, and Rebecca sat huddled around a table cluttered with files and notes. The air was thick with the weight of anticipation and the unspoken pressure of what lay ahead. Sarah glanced at the worn photograph of Amy pinned to the corkboard, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and empathy. Marcus broke the silence, his voice steady but urgent. We need to dig deeper into Henry's past. There's something there, something that connects him to Amy beyond mere acquaintance. Rebecca nodded, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the table as she considered their next move. We can't ignore Linda's account. This deathbed confession might be cryptic, but it's a lead we haven't had in years. We need to corroborate it with whatever we have. In that moment, the door swung open, revealing a tall figure with a commanding presence. Detective Laura Grayson had a reputation for being relentless, a trait that had earned her both respect and fear. She was a new addition to the Flint Police Department, tasked with breathing new life into cold cases that had long been forgotten. I hear you're looking into the 2004 case, Laura stated, her tone both matter-of-fact and inquisitive. She wasted no time, her eyes scanning the room, absorbing the details with a practiced efficiency. Marcus stood, extending a hand. Detective Grayson, we're glad to have you. Any fresh perspective is more than welcome. Laura nodded, taking a seat and spreading out a series of documents. I've been reviewing the files, and there's something that's been bothering me. Did you know that in 2004 there was a break-in reported at Henry's workplace just weeks before Amy disappeared? It was written off as a random act, but what if it wasn't? Rebecca leaned forward, intrigued. Are you suggesting there's a connection between the break-in and Amy's disappearance? Laura met her gaze, her expression serious. It's a possibility we can't ignore, especially now that we have advanced forensic technology at our disposal. I suggest we apply genetic genealogy to the evidence collected from that break-in. If we're lucky, we might find a match that leads us closer to the truth. The room buzzed with the electric energy of newfound hope. Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. If we can extract DNA and find a match, it could tie everything together. It's a long shot, but it's the best lead we've had. Sarah, ever the realist, voiced the concern on everyone's mind. But what if it leads us nowhere, like so many times before? Laura's eyes softened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability in her otherwise stoic demeanor. Then we keep pushing. We owe it to Amy, to her family, and to everyone who's been haunted by this case. Sometimes it's the smallest thread that unravels the biggest mystery. With that resolve, the team set to work, each member driven by the possibility of finally solving the puzzle that had eluded them for so long. As they prepared to send the evidence for analysis, the tension in the air was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes involved. Little did they know, the results would reveal a connection more shocking than any of them could have anticipated. A connection that would not only shed light on Amy's fate, but also expose a web of secrets that had been carefully hidden for nearly 2 decades. The clock continued its steady march, each tick echoing the passage of time, as the town of Flint unknowingly braced for the revelations that were soon to come. The lab was a sterile environment, humming softly with the sound of advanced machinery. The team watched as the forensic technician prepared the samples, each step a meticulous dance of science and precision. Rebecca stood by, her eyes fixed on the screen, waiting for the first glimmers of data that could change everything. As the genetic genealogy process began, the tension in the room grew palpable. This was it, the moment they had been working toward for years, the culmination of countless hours of painstaking effort and relentless determination. The initial results trickled in slowly, like drops of water carving a path through stone. But as the data began to coalesce, a pattern emerged. A familial match. A name. The room went silent, the air heavy with disbelief. Laura's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper. "It's him. It's really him." Marcus leaned closer to the screen, his mind racing to comprehend the implications. But how? He was never even on our radar. The suspect's name, as common as any other, suddenly carried the weight of the unsolved mystery. He was a respected community member, a man who had seamlessly woven himself into the fabric of Flint, the kind of person no one would suspect. Sarah, standing in the back, felt a chill run down her spine. "It's always the ones you least expect," she murmured, a somber realization settling over her. Rebecca's heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of triumph and dread. "We need to confirm this," she said, her voice steady, despite the whirlwind of emotions. Laura nodded, her mind already racing with the next steps. "We'll need to collect a direct sample from him, and we need to do it without tipping him off." The team sprang into action, their movements a coordinated symphony of urgency and caution. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes now, not when the truth was so tantalizingly close. As they strategized, the weight of their discovery began to sink in. This wasn't just about solving a cold case. It was about exposing a hidden truth that could shatter the community's sense of safety and trust. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, voiced the question that lingered on everyone's mind. "What if he knows we're onto him? What if he runs?" Laura's gaze was steely, her resolve unwavering. "Then we need to act fast. We can't let him slip through our fingers. Not now, not when we're so close." The room was charged with a sense of urgency, the clock ticking down to a moment that could redefine everything they thought they knew. As they moved to gather the evidence that would confirm their suspicions, the town of Flint remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. But soon, the truth would come to light, a truth that would send shockwaves through the community and bring long-awaited justice for Amy and her family. The team worked swiftly, knowing that every second counted. Sarah, tasked with orchestrating the discreet collection of a DNA sample, felt the weight of the town's unspoken trust on her shoulders. This was a delicate operation, one that required precision and stealth. In the dimly lit conference room, Rebecca reviewed the plan once more. "We have to ensure this is airtight. We cannot afford a single misstep. The sample needs to be collected without raising any suspicions." Laura nodded, her gaze intense. "We'll use the community event tomorrow. It's the perfect opportunity. He'll be there, as always, playing the role of a model citizen." Marcus chimed in, his voice steady, yet tinged with urgency. "And we have the advantage of familiarity. Nobody would second-guess our presence there." The plan was set. As the day of the event dawned, the team moved with a quiet determination. The venue buzzed with the usual chatter, laughter echoing against the walls, a stark contrast to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Sarah, blending in seamlessly with the crowd, approached the suspect with a casual demeanor. "Hey there," she greeted warmly, masking her intent with a practiced ease. "It's so good to see everyone coming together like this." The suspect smiled, unsuspecting, his eyes crinkling with genuine warmth. "It's what makes Flint special," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of pride. As they chatted, Sarah subtly collected the glass he drank from, ensuring it was handled with care. Her heart raced, but her exterior remained calm and composed. This sample, this seemingly insignificant piece of evidence, held the potential to unravel years of mystery and deceit. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Laura coordinated from a distance, their focus unwavering. Every detail counted, every move had to be perfect. As Sarah discreetly passed the glass to Marcus, the team moved swiftly to transport the evidence for testing. In the lab, the air was thick with anticipation. The scientists worked with precision, each step methodical and deliberate. The room was silent save for the hum of machinery, a stark contrast to the storm raging within each team member's mind. Hours passed, stretching into what felt like an eternity. Finally, the results came in, the data aligning with undeniable clarity. The DNA matched. The suspect, the man hidden in plain sight for so long, was indeed connected to the crime, a truth that would soon shatter the facade he had so carefully constructed. Rebecca's voice trembled slightly as she relayed the confirmation to her team. "It's him. We have him." The words, though quietly spoken, reverberated like a thunderclap. The team exchanged glances, a mixture of disbelief and resolve. They had done it. They had taken the first step towards justice for Amy and her family. Yet as they prepared for the next phase, a question lingered, a question that would ultimately test the very fabric of the community. Would Flint accept this truth? And could they, the bearers of this revelation, navigate the fallout that was sure to follow? The room felt both electrified and heavy as Rebecca's words hung in the air. The team, though momentarily paralyzed by the gravity of their breakthrough, knew there was no time to waste. Flint was a town on the brink of revelation, and their next moves would be crucial. Marcus, steadying his voice, broke the silence. "We need to ensure every detail is airtight. No room for doubt, no room for error. This has to hold up in court." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through the logistics. "I'll compile all our documentation, the chain of custody for the evidence, the lab results, everything. We need to be bulletproof." Meanwhile, Laura was already on the phone, setting up a meeting with the DA. "They need to be prepared for the media storm that's going to hit once this gets out," she said, her tone unwavering, "and we need to ensure that Amy's family is protected. This is going to be as hard on them as it is for the suspect's family." The enormity of what lay ahead was not lost on them. They were about to dismantle a life, expose a secret that had been buried beneath years of community trust and friendship. But justice demanded it, and they were committed to seeing it through. As the day wore on, the team worked tirelessly, each member driven by a shared purpose. They pored over documents, rechecked timelines, and rehearsed their statements. Every piece of the puzzle had to fit perfectly. By evening, they were ready. The DA, a seasoned professional with years of experience in high-profile cases, looked them over with a mixture of respect and caution. "This is solid work," he acknowledged, "but be prepared. This will stir emotions, and not everyone will be on our side." Rebecca took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. "We know," she replied softly, "but the truth has to come out. For Amy, for her family, and for Flint." With everything in place, they turned their attention to the next step, confronting the suspect. It would be a delicate operation, needing precision and care. The suspect, still blissfully unaware, was living his life as though nothing had changed. As dawn broke on the day of the arrest, the team gathered for a final briefing. There was a collective sense of resolve, a determination to see justice served. But beneath it all lingered a question that none of them dared to voice aloud. How would Flint react when one of their own was revealed to be a killer? And what would become of the community they all loved? As they moved out, the gravity of the moment settled over them like a shroud. The truth was about to come to light, and with it the hidden fractures within the town would be exposed. The stage was set for a confrontation that promised to be as dramatic as it was necessary. The morning air was crisp, a stark contrast to the tension gripping the team as they approached the modest, well-kept home that sat at the heart of Flint. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the lawn, a metaphorical harbinger for the darkness about to be unveiled. Inside that house lived Richard Harmon, a man whose reputation was as spotless as his perfectly manicured garden. To the town, Richard was an upstanding citizen, a cherished member of the church choir, and a dedicated volunteer at the local shelter. His warm smile and genuine interest in others had earned him a place of trust in many hearts. But today, that trust was about to be shattered. The team knew they had to approach this carefully. Richard's friendly demeanor and seemingly impeccable life had woven him deeply into the community's fabric. Knocking on his door felt like knocking on the door of Flint itself. Richard opened the door with his usual affable smile, not a hint of suspicion in his eyes. "Good morning, officers. What brings you here so early?" Rebecca stepped forward, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her shoulders. "Richard Harmon, we have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the disappearance and murder of Amy Collins." For a split second, confusion flickered in Richard's eyes, quickly masked by a calm acceptance that was almost unsettling in its serenity. He nodded slowly, as if some part of him had been expecting this day to come, yet hoping it never would. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Richard's neighbors began to gather, drawn out by the commotion. Whispers spread like wildfire, disbelief etched on every face. The man they thought they knew was being led away, and with him went their sense of security. Inside the police car, Richard remained silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The team could only wonder what thoughts ran through his mind. Was there remorse, relief, or was it simply the end of a charade he'd maintained for years? At the station, Richard was processed, his fingerprints and mugshot a stark contrast to the smiling photos from community events that had adorned local newsletters. In the interrogation room, he sat across from Rebecca, his expression inscrutable. Rebecca took a deep breath, the enormity of what lay ahead pressing down on her. "Richard, this is your chance to tell the truth. For Amy, for her family, and for yourself. Why now after all these years?" Richard's gaze finally met hers, something indefinable flickering in his eyes. "Because you finally found the missing piece. And the truth is, I've been living a lie for so long, I almost forgot it was one." The room fell silent, the weight of his confession hanging in the air. Richard began to speak, his words unraveling the hidden life behind the public persona. A life marked by a darkness that had lurked beneath the surface, undetected by those who thought they knew him best. As Richard's story unfolded, each revelation was like a hammer blow, reshaping the narrative of his life and the town that had unwittingly harbored him. The team listened, their resolve mingled with a profound sadness for the lives affected by his actions. The arrest had sent shockwaves through Flint, a community grappling with the duality of a man they had trusted. As the news spread, questions arose, echoing through the streets and into the hearts of its residents. How had they not seen the signs? And what did this mean for a town that prided itself on knowing its own? The answers would come, but for now, only one thing was certain: Flint would never be the same again. As Richard's confession poured forth, it painted a chilling picture of a man who had seamlessly blended into the fabric of Flint, all while harboring a dark secret. His voice steady, he recounted the events of that fateful night in 2004, a tale of anger and impulse spiraling out of control. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Richard admitted, the veneer of his carefully constructed facade peeling away. "Amy was just there, and something snapped. I can't even explain it." The room was hushed, each detail a revelation that both horrified and clarified. Rebecca listened intently, her mind racing with the implications of his words. The team, seasoned as they were, struggled to reconcile the image of the trusted community leader with the monster he had revealed himself to be. With every word, Richard dismantled the narrative he had lived, exposing the cracks in his soul that had led to that tragic night. The truth, long buried, now surfaced, raw and unfiltered. In the days following Richard's arrest, Flint was a town divided. Some residents clung to disbelief, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the crimes he confessed to. Others grappled with feelings of betrayal and anger, their trust shattered. The trial that followed was swift, the evidence overwhelming. Richard's own confession was damning, his detailed recounting of the events leaving little room for doubt. As the verdict of guilty echoed through the courtroom, a collective sigh of relief swept over the town, a small measure of justice for Amy, whose life had been so cruelly cut short. Richard was sentenced to life in prison, a fate he accepted with a resigned nod, as if acknowledging the inevitable. The courtroom, filled with Amy's family and friends, was a sea of mixed emotions: grief, relief, and a semblance of closure. In the aftermath, Flint began the slow process of healing. The community, though shaken, found strength in unity, coming together to support Amy's family and one another. Her memory was honored in vigils and memorials, a reminder of the vibrant life that had touched so many. For Rebecca and her team, the resolution of Amy's case was both a triumph and a sobering reminder of the complexities of human nature. They had brought a killer to justice, but the scars left behind were deep and enduring. As the months passed, the town of Flint slowly rebuilt its sense of self, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. Conversations about vigilance and community responsibility became commonplace, a testament to the lessons learned. In quiet moments, Rebecca reflected on the case that had consumed her for so long. Justice, she realized, was not a single moment in time, but a continuous journey of remembering and honoring those who had been lost. As she stood at Amy's memorial, the sun setting on the horizon, Rebecca felt a sense of peace, knowing they had done right by Amy's memory. Flint would never forget the darkness it had faced, but it had emerged stronger, united in the shared hope for a brighter future. And as the town moved forward, the legacy of Amy's spirit lived on, a beacon of resilience and a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found in the bonds that tie us together.